Which celebrities have actually K-ed someone? Matthew Broderick aka Ferris Bueller. Drove on the wrong side of the road in Ireland and got into a head-on collision. Ked the driver and passenger. Faced essentially none consequences either. Was he drunk? Or was just an accident? I bet it happens to tourists every once in a while in those wrong side countries. He crossed into another lane on a country road while driving with his girlfriend, Jennifer Gray. No one was drinking. He was ultimately charged with careless driving because it was a terrible accident. Jennifer Gray is the only witness because Matthew has amnesia. She discussed this tragic event in her book. Jennifer Gray was in the car as his passenger. Apparently she remembers the accident. But Matthew doesn't because he was knocked out. John Travolta withheld life-saving medication for his special needs son because Lord Xenu told him. John Travolta blasted tons of unnecessary injections in his plastic face and pain KS. But nope, can't give DS to his son. On a point of Scientology doctrine, Xenu is the bad guy, basically Satan, the galactic overlord. His full title, decided to solve the problem of overpopulation by killing billions of people and trapping their souls in volcanoes. That is not even a joke. But most Scientologists have no idea it is part of the church's belief system because you have to be a high level within the church. Hubbard wasn't even a good science fiction writer. It's such obviously half-baked, rush stupid SH, that I am honestly shocked that so many people ever fell for it in the first place. Imagine if like Octavia Butler had created a sci-fi religion. At least it would be a compelling narrative. That's like John Smith and Mormonism. Total grifter. Under the Banner of Heaven is an amazing book if you want to read how ridiculous the formation of the Mormon region was. I'm not saying other religions' foundings are less absurd, but John Smith's grift was relatively recent and thus better documented. Googling the disease his son had. What an awful world we live in. A couple in my hometown were convicted of murder for not giving their child healthcare for religious reasons. The same should happen to him. Ted Kennedy married Joe Kopechny in a drunk driving accident while he was driving her from a party to an unknown but highly suspicious location. He drove off a bridge, left her to drown and went home. Didn't report the accident until he was sober 12 hours later. He was a senator US at the time and served in the Senate for another 40 years. It's likely he would have been a serious POTUS candidate without this happening. Nothing likely about it. He would have been president. Even as it was, he came surprisingly close to wresting the nomination away from incumbent Carter in 1980. I've been wondering for 43 years if he could have beaten Reagan. Chappaquiddick is the movie about this. Black Water is a novella by Joyce Carol Oates about this. Matthew Broderick, Rebecca Gayheart, Phil Spector, Robert Blake, William S. O.J. Simpson. I hope they solve who murdered his wife one day. Apparently, Juice is still out there looking for the real KS. Based on his work to date, we can conclude that those KS had some connection to golf, as most of his investigations have been on the back nine. Christopher Lee has definitely ked people. He was a British spy during World War II. There's a clip online where he is correcting Peter Jackson on what it sounds like when the breath leaves a person after stabbing them. This was for the scene where Saruman is stabbed in the back. Peter Jackson said that Christopher Lee seemed to have a lot of intimate knowledge about the subject. Edit. A lot of argument came from this. Here is the video. Take it how you will. But I just repeated what the people I referenced said. I think Lee was special forces, not a spy. James Doohan, the original Scotty from Star Trek. He ked 2 German snipers on D-Day. Deaths during war should probably have their own category. Agreed. Lots of actors were soldiers back then. And king is expected. Many of the first astronauts had served and flown in combat missions. Effing legend. Doohan personally took out 2 German snipers, was shot 4 times in one of his legs, once in his hand, which ultimately resulted in him losing his middle finger, and once in his chest. The shot to his chest would have been fatal had the bullet not been deflected by a silver cigarette case given to him by his brother. Absolutely. Vince Neil ked the drummer from Hanoi Rocks while driving drunk. And ruined the lives of the people in the car he hit. Yes, he's really trash, plus drove drunk yet again after that. Plus he's completely washed singing wise. That whole band is hot garbage. Possibly with the exception of Mick Mars. He's older than the others and seemed to have some kind of moral compass. Though, to be fair, after reading The Dirt I don't know if Mick's okay or if he just seems okay compared to the other 3. Never read The Dirt, but I did see the movie. They all seem kinda terrible. Mick seemed at least a bit more normal, but I bet if he didn't have his sickness, he would maybe be just as effed up. I also think Mick Mars having kids definitely also had an impact. Rey Mysterio accidentally ked a wrestler in the ring with one of his moves. I saw the video when the news came up and I was so shocked. I'll never forget it. Is that a word like shocked and choked up, or Sid you just typo? Is Sid someone we should know about, or did you just typo? Lol. Technically this isn't true. The wrestler died when his neck snapped as he hit the rope. Ray went for the 619 and the guy didn't react because A, dead, and B, Ray didn't actually make contact. Darn, it's effing crazy watching them just keep going in hindsight. But then I assumed they thought he was knocked out and would be handled by the medics, although it took the medics way too long to get to him anyway. Laura Bush Ket a guy. That's right, Laura Bush Ket a guy. 9/11. Loud cheers. That Family Guy reference was the first thing I thought of when I read this question, lol. In an interview from maybe 30 years ago, Mr. T said of the guy who assaulted his mother, "I ain't gonna say I ket him, but won't nobody ever see him again." Anyone who assaults Mr. T's mom has essentially ked themselves. I pity the fool. I've been waiting 40 years for this sentence to find its proper context, and here it is. Bravo. If someone's dumb enough to go after Mr. T's mother, it's got to be natural selection at that point. Do you count pets? Ozzy Osbourne shot and ked 17 of his cats and attempted to murder his wife. She survived with some luck. From the older times, the junkie-turned-writer William Burroughs, author of the legendary Naked Lunch, ked his second wife. I don't know much about Ozzy, but I always thought he and his wife were a good couple. Weird and eccentric, and they fit so well. Such a shame. She also seems pretty awful tbh. I'm not sure how to link videos, but there is an interview floating around where she's talking about how she treated an assistant during a house fire, and it's effing horrific. And she told the story on a panel show. Wow, FM, I didn't know that. I still wonder about Robert Wagner. Venus Williams, Caitlyn Jenner, Laura Bush and Rebecca Gayheart, all automobile related. Rebecca Gayheart swerved around a stopped car that was waiting for a child to cross the street, and struck and ked the child. She was old enough to know better. It was a monstrous thing to do. She was only sentenced to 3 years probation. I don't know how she avoided prison. For some reason this infuriated me more than the suspected murderers, because we know she did it. There's no denying it. They just let her walk because that child was no one of consequence as far as the court was concerned. You've never swerved around a stalled car in the road? I had to go around 2 yesterday. The reason she got such a light sentence is, it was an accident. It wasn't at a crosswalk and the kid ran into the street after a soccer ball, forcing the car in front of her to slam on their brakes. She swerved to avoid hitting the car in front of her. The DA folds second-degree misdemeanor manslaughter charges because there was no DS, alcohol, or reckless driving. It was simply an accident. And as horrible as it is, instead of acting like an elitist $1 like most of these celebrities that ked someone, she stayed on scene for 5 hours and paid all the medical and funeral expenses for the poor kid. He's not that well known these days, but Phil Spector. There's ked, and straight up murder. Spector was the latter. Considering the stories some musicians told about him, I'm surprised he didn't kill more people. Once someone is a known murderer, I feel pretty confident saying we don't know 100% for sure they didn't kill anyone we never found out about. Sir Christopher Lee was an hunter for the British Secret Service for a while post-war. He very adamantly corrected Peter Jackson on the sound that a man makes when a knife pierces his back. He was also the inspiration for his cousin Ian Fleming when he created James Bond. I love Christopher Lee more now. DaBaby ked someone in a grocery store once, I believe. Gucci Mane ked a guy in self-defense when the guy broke into his home. He also won that case and is the meaning behind the Youngboy lyric "I feel like I'm Gucci Mane" in 2006. In self-defense, yeah. Someone tried to rob him in Walmart. If you've seen the security video, it absolutely was not self-defense, and the kid he ked didn't deserve to die. I'd give he could be named celebrity cause he is known well, but rather only at black metal scene Varg Vikernes. He ked another co-member of the Mayhem band, and due to it had been kicked out, Euronymous. It was wild times for black metal. A lot of events like this. Murders, sides and burned churches. Emo interesting and disturbing history. Google for more. Not to mention Varg has been arrested multiple times in connection to suspected tistic plots in France. Due to his wife buying a suspicious amount of rifles, he was sent the manifesto of the Tist Anders Breivik, Oslo Bing, 2011 and the Utøya massacre. Vikernes' ramblings on his blog talked about Anders not killing enough Muslims. Anders was called a Zionist agent. He's a neon. Black metal adjacent crimes were insane. I think you can remove sympathizer because he's a straight up neon. As far as I'm aware, he is pretty much the person who started the genre NSBM. F. Varg. He is a huge neon sympathizer as well and made a SH-tie racist TTRPG. I remember listening to Burzum as a teen. Because I didn't know all this. I'm not that into metal anymore, especially black metal. But even if I was, this guy would not be played in this house. What is the Florida of Europe? In what sense? Spain's Costa del Sol ticks the entitled retiree destination box, but the people inexplicably doing crazy SH stereotype firmly belongs to Russia. I was thinking of the latter. Russia is a good bet. The meanwhile, in Russia meme is pretty close in spirit to the Florida man meme. Meanwhile, Florida man and Russia, combined is a fascinating new meme idea for satire potential, since crazy is just normal these days. Is Russia really Europe though? 75% of Russia is in Asia. 75% of their population is in Europe, though. Blackpool. Admittedly it's on a smaller scale, but what it lacks in size, it makes it up in STD rates, welfare distribution and average tooth count. Fun fact, Blackpool is the only city in the UK with the same average lifespan as the US. With our murder rate and lack of healthcare, what are they eating? Pies, just pies. I had to look it up, sounds horrifying. Please enjoy these wonderful photos. As a Florida man who has found an alligator in my backyard before, no joke, this is serious, I definitely have to say Russia. I've had 2 pythons show up in the yard of the house I grew up in, years before it was widely known how invasive they were. Never got a gator though. There is a running canal in the back of my yard, so gators are not rare where I live. Edit. Once, the black folk who used to live in the opposite side caught one and roasted it. Not gonna lie, it smelled good. Chicken tastes a lot like gator. Someone left a back door open at my last job one Friday and one waltzed right in. When I was in Barcelona this past June, I had the opportunity to witness a young, trashy British couple act as though they were posh. It was then that I realized that the British are the Floridians of Europe. Oh, trashy Brits are on another level. You have to see it to believe it, lol. I haven't ever dealt with trashy Brits personally, but they seem cut from the same cloth that rednecks here in the States are. I dunno, rednecks speak English poorly. I still haven't managed to figure out what language trashy Brits speak, but it sure as SH isn't English. Florida is kinda stupid for stupid's sake. Here in the UK we tell ourselves we are civilized, refined, smart and in control while still doing equally stupid stuff. In the Arab world it's 100% Egypt. Don't listen to anyone who says it's Iraq. We're normal. Fellow Arab here, not Iraqi, it's definitely 100% Egypt. I had no idea. That's interesting. What makes Egypt so crazy? Pyramids. For normal people Russia. For politics Poland. From what I understand about Polish politics though, which is admittedly very little, aren't the actions of the government in terms of domestic policy pretty counter-majoritarian? Obviously not everyone in Florida is a DeSantis fan. But it feels like the average Floridian, senile retiree, is more okay with GOP policies than the average Polish person is with ZP policies. I'm Polish and I don't know anything about politics in Texas, but Polish ruling party, PiS, it bases its program on social conservatism, anti-abortion, anti-LGBT, alliance with the Catholic Church, emphasizing national values, broad social benefit program. I suppose it's not the case in Texas? Even the question of Texas having a broad social benefit program makes me laugh, not a criticism of you. Indeed, they do not have that. They refused like $100 billion in federal funding to expand Medicare. The only right answer. Blackpool. Blackpool can be pretty effing grim and is undeniably like the mentor to the concept of tawdriness. But it just isn't dislikeful and intense like Florida is. Emo. What's that? A resort city in Britain. The Balkans. I would say the Balkans are the equivalent of the rural South in general. I would agree. Their hospitality when I visited earlier this month was so heartwarming. Every household I visited brought out so much meat and alcohol every meal that my gout flared up just in time for the flight home. Croatia and Serbia didn't really feel too rural, but Bosnia and Herzegovina felt rural but felt most beautiful to me. People in B&H are so kind and loving. Big love to Balkan people. Anywhere the Brits go on holiday. Have they never heard of sunscreen? They come in 2 shades, 3rd degree sunburn or orange self-tanner. Does reflectively pasty count as a shade? As a Brit, I agree. But let's be honest, the Germans, Scandies and Dutch aren't far behind us. Prob depends on the place. All of us usual suspects in the SH Titerist game have at least that one place that we've ruined. The UK. Florida is a microcosm of the US, and we learned it from watching you, Dad. In that the Ural Mountains are the technical dividing line between Europe and Asia. I'll have to go with Western Russia. In particular, you could overlay Florida on top of the part of Russia that spans from Voronezh to Saratov and then down to Volgograd. Hey, I played that Empire Earth campaign. Urk for sure. What is an Urk? I've asked myself this question many times. A village in the Netherlands that has a reputation for being extremely religious. Farite, and I think it might be more the Alabama of the Netherlands, Europe. I think a lot of Europeans would say Italy, specifically because they're wildly obnoxious and got that whole fascism thing going on again. Aside from the food and the geography, I've heard it's kind of not so great right now. I don't think anyone will ever come close to anything a Florida man is capable of though. Those headlines are just too wild to replicate outside of anywhere except like Australia. That is just peninsula envy. As a Floridian, I don't know if I should take offense to this or not. We know, that's why we keep doing it. Blackpool for sure. Bunch of toothless chav maniacs. Seems like Blackpool is getting lots of votes. I had to watch a YouTube video about it. Sounds depressing as heck. Yeah, it's terrible. S's. I love S. I used to live in Colchester for a year. I have only good memories from there. Freshen or drink, governor? Adam Carolla used to have a segment on his radio show called Florida or Germany where he would read newspaper articles of strange crimes and callers would guess if it took place in Florida or Germany. I thought it was entertaining. Holy SH. Thank you for reminding me of this. I called into Love Line and told a Florida or Germany when I was a teen. This must have been around 2005. This was when they had callers give the stories and both Adam and the doc would guess the location. I was so proud of myself. Hee hee. Benidorm equals the villages. Italy. It's hot, full of tourists, and has a history of going fascist. Surprised Italy only has 8 votes here. Renormal day in Russia. Wait, this is an actual sub, oh my. It's effing hilarious. Physically, Iberia, Spain and Portugal. Human, Birmingham, or Russia. Not much difference really. I was going to say that geographically, Italy fits the long skinny bit of land sticking out into a relatively warm sea description best, although it is a lot hillier than Florida. Romania. Yay, just check the news regarding Vaslui. I'm surprised no one has said Hungary. Viktor Orban definitely has DeSantis vibes. There will only be one Florida. Fortunately. It's probably Greece and specifically Crete. People like to go there for vacation. It's hot and all the people own guns and are conservative religious madlads. Or Greece in general. In Athens a random guy stopped me on the sidewalk to explain a bunch of awful, elder soft Zion-style anti-Semitic bullshit, including his apparently sincere belief that Jewish people have tails. With Jewish space lasers, anyone? Oh, so because one guy in Athens was unhinged that means the other 10 millions of us are like him. The UK. But rather than Florida man it's instead UK politician. Crazy? Loads of places. Effing expensive? Loads of places. Full of old people? Loads of places. Full of rednecks? Loads of places. Hotter than Heck's Kitchen? Loads of places. School mass shootings? Well, Norway had one. Like ever. All of those things combined? Nowhere. Nowhere. Sicily has entered the game. Lots of interesting responses. Blackpool is the most intriguing. I've never heard of it before but I would like to see this place in person. Is there anything I should know before visiting Blackpool? I'll be there to observe the people, not participate in tourist stuff. Yes, don't. Russia, or Lincolnshire, UK. Given the amount of Russians in Lincolnshire, I'd say this tracks well. I want to say Russia. It's still Florida. Insightful. Italy. Shout out to Serbia. Gotta be one of my favorite Confederate states FRFR. Balkan is basically Florida, Texas and Ohio mashed together.